and weld with the same welder or plasma cutter or machine. Anyway, we'll get to the details in just a moment. I'm Tim Johnson. You're watching Shop Tool Reviews. Okay, so we've already covered the features of this machine. This is the brand new YesWelder MP200, or the FIRSTESS MP200. It is a multi-process machine, a 5-in-1 welder. In other words, it will MIG, TIG, stick, Flux-core, as well as plasma cut, all with the same machine. It'll run on 110 volts or 220 volts. But how well does it actually do? Well, as I mentioned, we've covered the features of this side, we've covered the features of this machine, but we really haven't used it. Well, today we're going to use the MIG gun or the MIG torch as well as the plasma cutting torch and let you know what we think about it. Now let's dig in. Okay, so today what we're going to do with the YesWelder MP200 is we are going to use the plasma as well as the MIG gun, and that's all the processes we're going to do today. So I'm going to go ahead and move our MIG gun out of the way. We'll connect that here in one moment. And let's hook up our plasma gun. I mentioned this in our feature video. I really like this gun. It's a good looking gun. Got a nice trigger guard, easy to move out of the way, easy trigger to pull. Nice looking tips here, swirl to ring, the whole shebang here. Not a bad looking tip, not a bad looking gun whatsoever. We'll see how it performs. I literally have not used this one bit. You can see by the tip here. So we're going to hook it up for the first time. So real easy to hook this up. First we're going to put our gas or our air. So this is where our compressed air is coming through. Tighten that up. Put a wrench on it in a second. And then basically our serial plug or whatever you call this. And there is a notch there that lines that up, and then tighten the ring on it to ensure that you got it on the machine. Kind of hard to get your fingers in there. There we go. And so now we know it's locked into place and not going anywhere. So now we've got our air line hooked up, we got our torch hooked up, and we're ready to go. First thing we're going to do is take our 110 cord and plug in our 220 adapter. That's going to enable us to do a little more cutting, a little more welding. For the plasma cutting, we need to make sure that we hook up our air supply. So here's our inlet right here. And this is actually a bleeder valve here that you'll see that actually pop open once we apply air pressure. And this is basically a water separator that will contain any water droplets if there's any water in the air lines. Very important that a plasma cutter gets nice dry air. So I would run this even if you already have a dryer on your system or water traps or what have you. And as you saw, this kind of plunger popped down, and so now we can use that to push up. We can use that to push up and bleed off any water that gets trapped in there or caught in there. And we can turn our unit on. See both fans kick on. Keep everything nice and cool. So let's turn the unit on. And we'll see our screen fire up here. And then we can go to the home screen, and we want to go to plasma cutting. There we go. And we're starting with 3/16. I'm going to leave it at 30 amps to see how we do with that. I may come back and bump that up if we're not cutting through, but we're going to leave it right there. Okay, what we have here is we have a piece of 3/16 inch material. So we got some 3/16 inch steel, and I'm going to cut some coupons out. So some little 3x4 so that we can do some welding. We can practice this cutting as well. So I've got two scribes here, each at 3 inches long, and then we'll actually 3 inches wide, and then we'll cut them at 4 inches long. I think these are actually, this is 12 inches wide right here. So anyway, so we should be able to get 3 coupons out of each one of these cuts. So we'll make 2 cuts here in this 3/16, see how well it does. We may adjust a little bit on the 30 amps, but let's see. As I mentioned, we have yet to use this. Okay, so we've got it set to 30 amps. Okay, what we have here is we have a piece of 3/16 inch material. So we got some 3/16 inch steel, and I'm going to cut some coupons out. So some little 3x4 so that we can do some welding. We can practice this cutting as well. So I've got 2 scribes here, each at 3 inches long, and then we'll actually 3 inches wide, and then we'll cut them at 4 inches long. I think these are actually, this is 12 inches wide right here. So anyway, so we should be able to get 3 coupons out of each one of these cuts. So we'll make 2 cuts here in this 3/16, see how well it does. We may adjust a little bit on the 30 amps, but let's see. As I mentioned, we have yet to use this. Now we should be good. Here we go. Okay, I'm moving a little slower. By the way, I had a little helmet issue there at the start. So I'm moving a little slow. I'm going to bump our amperage up just a touch. I'm going to 33 amps. Very first cut, leaving a little dross there on the back side. Not too bad. I can grind off pretty easy. A little more than I'd like, but I think bumping up the amperage will definitely help that. So let's make the next cut. Okay, I went ahead up to 40 amps because I want to move a little quicker now. So here we go. Yeah, so that's a lot better cut. Still leaving some dross on the backside, but again, nothing too bad. Decent clean cut. Again, for this being my first 2 cuts I've made, it's definitely penetrating fine. I did have it at the max 40 amps on making that cut on that 3/16. They say it'll cut up to a 1/2 inch. I guess you'd have to cut a lot slower, but again, even cutting that 3/16, it cut it quite clean. So not too much work to clean that up, clean up that dross. Okay, I've got it turned back down to 30 amps, and I'm going to take it a little bit slower this time and just see what type of cut we're going to get out of this. I seem to cut just fine, leave about the same amount of dross as on the 40 amps. Let me turn it down a little more. Okay, I'm down to 25 now. I think I'm a little bit low, but let's just see what happens here. Actually, that seemed pretty good. It cut decent, even at 25 amps. Let's turn it down a little bit more. I've got it down to 22 amps, and again, we are cutting 3/16 inch material. Yep, not enough to penetrate there. I think 25, let's go to 24. I think 25 is kind of the sweet spot for this. Yeah, I'd say 25 amps is probably perfect for this 3/16 inch material. Let's go back to 25 again. Here we go. Yeah, I tried to move a little too fast there. Back it up, get a fresh cut here. All right, let's go ahead and move to a piece of 1/4 inch. That's a piece of 1/4 inch bar stock here, and we're going to do a little freehanding here. And I've got it, I've got it at 30 amps. Let's see what happens at 30. Let's try it again at 30. Yeah, 30 cuts through there. I think I would like it. I'm gonna go to 35. Yeah, I'm liking that at 35 a lot better than at 30. My travel speed is a lot better at 30. In fact, I'm going to run up to 40. Yeah, that works a lot better for me. I would run this at 40 amps and cut up to 1/4 inch steel, which it cuts great, but I don't know about cutting any 1/2 inch steel with it. Okay, we're going to run one more test here with the plasma cutter. I've got a piece of 5/16 inch material. So you can see there, that's barely fitting on there, and that's 5/16. It's right there, 5/16. So little 5/16 inch plate. Let's see how well it cuts. Okay, 5/16 at 40 amps. That cut rather well. I'm going pretty slow, slower than I like to, but still, it cut well. Now, just to give you some reference, when you step down to some thinner metal, this is going to cut like a breeze. I don't want you to think that this thing's hindered whatsoever, because typically the hobbyist is typically not cutting 1/2 inch steel. So something like angle iron or 1/8 inch steel should be a breeze for this thing, and I'll show you here. So you can cut anything you want to. When you get down below 1/4 inch, you can probably move as fast as you want to, depending on how much heat you got in it. So really clean cuts when you step down to the thinner stuff. You can see how clean you can be now. I just wanted to test on the thicker stuff, because if I went on the thinner stuff, then you'd say, well, how does it do on thicker? So I think 3/16 and quarter, you are no problem whatsoever. Once you step up above that, you're really getting into moving pretty slow to make your cuts. But at 40 amps on this 1/4 inch and 5/16, I think you're fine. Okay, let's turn off our machine, and then we'll swap this out and get ready to MIG. Okay, let's put our wire in the welder. Open it up here, reverse thread, and we're going to run a small spool. So, and 13mm wrench or socket. With a little bit of tension on there. We want to open this up, make sure that our wheel's not putting pressure on it, and we're going to feed through here. And then we want to make sure that we get in the next one as well. There we go. And by the way, while we're here, I'm running 030 70S6, ER70S6 wire. And let's just look at our wheel here. So we've got an 0.8 and 0.9 wire. So 0.9 would be a 035, 0.8 is 030, and that's what we're running here. So use that. Clamp down our wheel. And I want to put a little bit of stub out right here before we hook up our torch. There we go. So we've got a little bit of wire sticking out there. Now we can hook up our torch. This is a Euro style connector, which I really like. And so our wire feed is going in here. So I'm going to make sure I put that in there. And then it's as easy as clamping this down. There we go. Now we still need wire run out the tip of our gun here, which sometimes I like to go ahead and just take the tip off, make sure we're going to run through okay. And let's turn our machine on. Got an easy way to do this. And we'll go to our home screen. And we're going to MIG with gas. And so we can select that. And that tells us we want our ground clamp on the negative side, not on the ground lead. So we got to change this out and put it on the negative side. There we go. We want to, we're running argon CO2. And then our wire, or we're running steel, not stainless steel. And 030 wire. And we're going to be welding 3/16. And we're going to leave burn back at nothing. And no memory settings. So a little trick here, we need to run our wire. If we hold this dial here on the left down, we'll see it's now running our wire. And we can both watch the spool to make sure it's still turning and to make sure it's feeding wire. I think I feel it coming up. There we go. Okay, so we've got our wire fed through here. We can put our tips back on here. I'll go ahead and trim this back where I want it. And we've got our settings all set for 3/16 steel, so let's do some welding. So we're just going to make a couple of quick welds here, just to see how well this does. And we'll just do a couple of laps here on 2 pieces of 3/16. Okay, just remember, you've got a good view at this. I don't have the best view at it because I'm looking kind of from behind it. But anyway, I'm going to do my best to run a decent weld here. It's got us set at 122 amps. And it looks like 25.6 inches per minute is what the speed's set at, which that's going to change based off your amperage. You really can't change the wire feed speed. It changes with your amperage. You can change the trim, but again, we're going to leave it at the setting for the 3/16, which they're saying 122 amps. And here we go. Not too bad. Let me try to get a better vantage here. Can you tell I'm totally missing that because I can't see the puddle? All right, let me get a closer look here. Now let's see if I can hit my target a little better. Yeah, actually that amperage looks pretty good there. Looks like I'm getting decent penetration. My weld's pretty flat, not too tall. It's not sinking in too bad either. Let's run that some more. I'm pretty happy there. I might bump the heat up just a little bit to see if we can melt that edge down a little more. Actually, if I spent a little more time up there, I could probably bring that down as well, like I did just there. But again, that heat's not too far off. Depending on how fast you want to travel, that's not too bad. And again, because I'm kind of sitting back on the weld because you're getting a better vantage point, I'm not getting up on this top plate as much as I should. I'm going to bump it up here to 125 amps. Just give us a few more amps here. Still missing my mark, guys. Sorry about that. We'll bump the heat up a little bit more. So now we're at 127 amps. That's much better, if I can just weld straight. Now let me really tick some people off, and I'll do a little pull weld here. Not bad at all. Let me tack this up real quick. All right, let's see how we do here. Okay, not too bad at all. Nice little weld. By the way, I could have cleaned up these edges, but I on purpose didn't want to touch anything. So you see all the mill scale, everything else is still left on all this plate. And so that's what we're welding through, and that's why we're getting a lot of splatter in there as well, probably even on the camera lens. But anyway, I really like, I've mentioned this before, I really like the Tweco style guns that YesWelder uses. I'm saying that maybe not right, but anyway, that's kind of the form factor. I really like it. I like the Euro style connector on it, and seems to be welding really well. I like it a little hotter than usual, but that's nothing different. Okay, first things first, I need to work on my camera angle or camera view, point of view, if you will, to give you a better view as well as me a better view, because a lot of those shots, especially in the beginning, I'm kind of leaned way back and trying to stay away from the camera, and I'm just too far away from my torch to be able to see what I'm doing. Obviously, I was making some pretty poor welds. Anyway, the machine does quite well. We were pretty impressed. Again, to be a multi-process machine that both cuts and welds. As far as the welding side, we were impressed with it. We were impressed with the cutting side as well. Now, they claim to be able to cut a 1/2 inch thick of steel. I don't think I'd be wanting to cut 1/2 inch thick steel with this machine. Could it do it? Maybe. We didn't try it. But I think 5/16 is really getting to that max as far as how fast you want to travel. I'm kind of impatient and I want to travel pretty fast, so I want to be able to cut through that at a pretty decent pace. And we think at a 1/4 inch, no problem whatsoever. At 5/16, really no problem. But above that, I think you're going to have to go so slow that I don't know, it would kind of bug me. But can it do it? Probably. But again, I think you're getting out of those bounds of probably why you'd be buying this machine anyway. You're probably a hobbyist or kind of that entry-level person or a small fabricator, which you're typically going to be doing 1/4 inch and smaller, 1/4 inch and thinner anyway, which is going to work excellent for. So we were really happy with the cutting side. We're definitely happy with the components of the YesWelder, and that's something we've commented on before with YesWelder, is even though they're on the cheaper side money-wise, and sometimes, you know, the case may seem a little flimsy in the door and things like that, they know that, they realize that, they know they're in that entry-level slash hobbyist slash DIYer, so they're not afraid to say that. At the same time, they use some really good components. I like their MIG torch. I even like their plasma cutting torch. They seem to have really good performance out of these, as well as even the hookups, things like that. Now, one thing I don't care for, I mentioned, was the fact that I've got to run an O-ring on the back where you hook up your gas. And I mentioned that it comes with this O-ring, which works with actually their line here, their gas line. But I wanted to run the gas line. I've already got hooked to my regulator, already got hooked to my bottle. So all I had to do was go to my O-ring collection and pull out a smaller O-ring, put that in there, and then that worked absolutely fine with my line. But if you use their line, their O-ring's going to work. But make sure you have an O-ring back there in that fitting. And by all means, you can always check that whenever you hook up a gas line. Spray a little soap on it, make sure you're not getting any leaks anyway, and that'll tell you really quickly of whether or not you're missing that O-ring. That's really the only drawback I see here. As far as the interface, YesWelder has done a tremendous job of upgrading their interface on these multi-process welders versus their first batches. Again, performance-wise, they did quite well, but the interface just wasn't quite as nice as this one is. So right now, the only place this is found is on Kickstarter. They did give us this machine. They sent it out to us, said, hey, you know, be honest with your audience. Tell them what you think. But we want to get this in your hands first. So the only place you can find this is on Kickstarter right now. I'm sure pretty soon it will make it over to the YesWelder site. We have reviewed many other YesWelder products. One of them is this 3-window helmet here, which we're ecstatic about, especially for the price. So I'll put a link in the description on both to the Kickstarter as well as to the YesWelder site as well, where you can find the rest of their products. So hey, you know, do what you think. And if you want to buy into something that's brand new, we think it's going to be a great product. And where it's going to fit is the fact that you don't have to have 3 machines. You know, you don't need a TIG machine, a MIG machine, and a plasma cutter. You can get it all right here. So that makes it quite nice. And it's only 25 pounds as well. So taking up variable space as well as not hard to move around. So check it out for yourself. Again, it's the YesWelder FIRSTESS MP200. Also, keep track of us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you don't mind, would you like and subscribe, or like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already? By all means, if you hated our video, then give us a thumbs down. But would you let us know in the comments why? Have a great day and keep smiling.